Now we are going to discuss the topic of soil works for road construction. So when we use the word soil, it means the subgrade. Function and significance of subgrade properties. So sometimes subgrade is called as the basement soil of road bed, important for structural and pavement life. So there is a vital role of subgrade. Should not deflect excessively due to dynamic loading. Dynamic loading is induced when the traffic is moving over the surface of the road, maybe in fill or embankment. Desirable properties of soil as subgrade material. Stability, incompressibility, permanency of strength, minimum changes in volume and stability under adverse condition of weather and groundwater. Good drainage, ease of compaction. So these are some desirable properties of soil as subgrade material. Subgrade soil strength. So generally the strength or subgrade soil strength is assessed in terms of California bearing ratio, CBR. So we can say assessed in terms of CBR of subgrade soil for most critical moisture conditions. So in this regard, soil type, moisture content, dry density, internal structure of the soil, type and mode of stress application. So these are the important things which are to be considered. Subgrade layer in pavement profile. Well, this point is very important. Although a pavement's wearing course is most prominent, the success or failure of a pavement is more often dependent upon the underlying subgrade, the material upon which the pavement structure is built. Subgrades are composed of a wide range of materials, although some are much better than others. This section discusses a few of the aspects of subgrade materials that make them either desirable or undesirable and the typical tests used to characterize subgrades. Well, on this particular slide, you can see that compaction is being done, and look at that effect of poor subgrade. So because of the poor subgrade, ultimately we are having the defect at the top of the pavement like that. Subgrade's performance generally depends on three of its basic characteristics, all of which are interrelated. So this point must be considered over here, that these are the three basic characteristics which are interrelated. Number one, load bearing capacity. The subgrade must be able to support loads transmitted from the pavement structure. This load bearing capacity is often affected by degree of compaction, moisture content and soil type. A subgrade that can support a high amount of loading without excessive deformation is considered good. So here you can see the definition of a good subgrade. So what is a good subgrade? So you can say a subgrade that can support a high amount of loading without excessive deformation, that is the good subgrade. Okay, number two is the moisture content. Moisture tends to affect a number of subgrade properties, including load-bearing capacity, shrinkage, and swelling. Moisture content can be influenced by a number of things such as drainage, groundwater table elevation, infiltration, or pavement porosity, which can be assisted by cracks in the pavement. Generally, excessive wet subgrades will deform excessively under load. Number 3. Shrinkage and/or swelling. Some soils shrink or swell depending upon their moisture content. Additionally, soils with excessive fines content may be susceptible to frost heave. Shrinkage, swelling, and frost heave will tend to deform and crack any pavement type constructed over them. Okay, now we are going to discuss the poor subgrade. Poor subgrade should be avoided if possible, but when it is necessary to build over weak soils, there are several methods available to improve subgrade performance. So number 1, first method, removal and replacement, that is also called as over excavation. Poor subgrade soil can simply be removed and replaced with high quality fill. Although this is simple in concept, it can be expensive. The table given below shows typical over excavation depth recommended by the Colorado Asphalt Pavement Association. So look at the first column, that is the subgrade plasticity index, and the second column, depth of over excavation below normal subgrade elevation. So in case you can see that when the subgrade plasticity index is ranging from 10 to 20.7 meters depth, that is the depth of over excavation below normal subgrade elevation. For 20 to 30 plasticity index 1 meter, for 30 to 40 plasticity index 1.3 meters, 40 to 50 1.7 meters, and when you are having the plasticity index more than 50, then 2 meters depth will be considered for over excavation. The second method for poor subgrades, stabilization with cementitious or asphaltic binder. The addition of an appropriate binder such as lime, Portland cement, or emulsified asphalt can increase subgrade stiffness and or reduce swelling tendencies. So here we are considering the 3 stabilization materials: lime, Portland cement, and the asphalt emulsion. So lime is to be used when the subgrade where expansion potential combined with a lack of stability is a problem. So in that condition the lime is very useful. And the Portland cement, subgrades which exhibit a high plasticity index of 10 or less. And the asphalt emulsion, subgrades are sandy and do not have an excessive amount of material finer than 0.075 millimeter. Well, here if you just look at the Portland cement case, it is written that subgrades which exhibit a plasticity index of 10 or less. It means Portland cement can be used most efficiently when the subgrade is having the plasticity index of 10 or less. It doesn't mean that Portland cement cannot be used, but the best results will be there when plasticity index of the subgrade is equal to 10 or less. Additional base layers. Marginally poor subgrade soils may be compensated for by using additional base layers. These layers, usually of crust stone, either stabilized or unstabilized, serve to spread pavement loads over a larger subgrade area. This option is rather perilous, that means dangerous, when designing pavements for poor subgrades. The temptation may be to just design a thicker section with more base material because the thicker section will satisfy most design equations. Now this point is very important. I need your attention. However, these equations are at least in part empirical and were usually not intended to be used in extreme cases. So this is the conclusion. In short, a thick pavement structure over a poor subgrade will not necessarily make a good pavement. Well, you should take this sentence like that in short, a thick pavement structure over an extremely poor subgrade will not necessarily make a good pavement. So different phases of pavement construction. First, the soil works, and in that we will consider the site investigation and the construction works. That means compaction of the subgrade, etc. will also be considered. Then comes the sub-base works, then base course works, and in that particular cases, sub-base and the base specifications are to be considered, appropriate material will be selected, and then construction work will be done. And then surface works, surfacing will be done, and ultimately you will be having a prepared road surface like that. So various steps in soil works: soil investigation, and for the soil investigation, topographical investigation, geological investigation, laboratory testing, and the field investigation, all these will be considered, and then the report will be generated from the soil investigation results, and then construction works will be done. And in that particular case, the landscape works, compaction works, and the stabilization works, all these will come under construction works. Strength and stiffness of subgrade soil. Subgrade materials are typically characterized by their resistance to deformation under load, which can be either a measure of their strength, the stress needed to break or rupture a material, or stiffness. That means the relationship between stress and strain in the elastic range, or how well a material is able to return to its original shape and size after being stressed. In general, the more resistant to deformation a subgrade is, the more load it can support before reaching a critical deformation value. Three basic subgrade stiffness or strength characterizations are commonly used: California bearing ratio, CBR, resistance value, R value, and elastic, or you can say resilient modulus. Although there are other factors involved when evaluating subgrade materials, such as swell in the case of certain red clays. Stiffness is the most common characterization, and thus CBR, R value, and resilient modulus are discussed here. So first look at the California bearing ratio laboratory test. The California bearing ratio test was devised in 1929 in an attempt to eliminate some of the objections to field loadings test and to provide a quick method for comparing local base and sub-base materials. Now here you can see that some of the positive aspects of the CBR laboratory test are listed over here. You can go through these positive aspects. So California bearing ratio, in fact it is a penetration test in which a penetration piston or plunger is penetrated into the compacted material, and the California bearing ratio is defined as the load required for a certain penetration of plunger divided by standard load for same penetration multiplied by 100. And when we test the material in the CBR testing machine, surcharge plates are used on the mold to simulate the field conditions. And one surcharge plate represents 2.5 inches thick pavement, and two surcharge plates represent 5 inches thick pavement. So CBR can be determined corresponding to 0.1 inch penetration and corresponding to 0.2 inch penetration. So CBR corresponding to 0.1 inch penetration is load required for 0.1 inch penetration of plunger in pounds divided by 3000. So this one 3000 is the standard load in pounds required for a penetration of 0.1 inch in the standard crush available in the state of California. CBR corresponding to 0.2 inches penetration is the load required for 0.2 inch penetration of plunger in pounds divided by 4,500. This is 4,500 pound, that is the standard load in the case of standard crush corresponding to 0.2 inches penetration. That means 4,500 pounds load is needed to have a penetration of 0.2 inches in the standard crush. Higher of the two values will be used for design as the design CBR, and usually CBR corresponding to 0.1 inches is greater than the CBR corresponding to 0.2 inches. Well, CBR can be defined in terms of the pressure or the unit load in terms of pressure, and you can see here the formula is written x over y multiplied by 100. Now here x is material resistance or the unit load on piston, that is the pressure for 0.1 inches. And what is y? Y is the standard unit load or pressure for well-graded crushed stone available in the state of California, which is a standard crush. And you can see that corresponding to 0.1 inch penetration, the value of that pressure, that is 1000 psi. And corresponding to 0.2 inch penetration, the standard pressure is 1500 pound. So when you are using this formula and you are considering the pressure, so when you are going to determine the CBR value corresponding to 0.1 inch penetration, so x will be considered as the pressure required for 0.1 inch penetration the given material, and y is the standard pressure, and that is 1000 psi. In case of 0.2 inch penetration, the CBR value will be x would be the pressure required in the case of given material to have 0.2 inches penetration divided by standard pressure corresponding to 0.2 inch penetration, that is 1500 pound per square inch. As I have mentioned that CBR corresponding to 0.1 inch penetration is greater than the CBR corresponding to 0.8 inch penetration. This is because of the fact that the material offers more resistance against penetration in the beginning. Well, here you can see the bearing value, that is the pressure, and that is the penetration in inches for the different materials. And you can see that this curve is for the standard crush, which is having the CBI value of 100%. So obviously the standard crush that is available in the state of California, that is having the CBI value equal to 100%. So here you can see the behavior of the different materials. So as we are going to increase the pressure, so what is happening? There is increase in the penetration. But look at the behavior of this standard crush. The behavior is remarkable in the case of standard crush. And based upon the CBR values, we can categorize. These are the CBR values, and we are having very poor subgrade, poor to questionable subgrade, fair to good subgrade, very good subgrade, good subbases, good gravel bases, and here you can see good crushed rock and crushed gravel bases. So in this way we could be able to categorize the materials which are used in the pavement. Okay, here comes the resistance value, R value, laboratory test. So a method for evaluating treated and untreated materials for bases, subbases and subgrades for pavement thickness design. So here some description is given regarding the operators and the development of this test. Now if we just switch over to the formula for the resistance value, this is the formula of the resistance value, and this is the schematic diagram showing the arrangement of the test. The sample is kept here. At the top the testing head is there, and below that the base is there, and you can see that the pressure gauge is attached over here. The sample is wrapped in the rubber membrane, and fluid is present under pressure in the system. So look at the different variables present in the formula. So R is the resistance value, P sub V, that is the applied vertical pressure, and that is 160 psi that we will have to apply, and P sub H is the transmitted horizontal pressure at the vertical pressure of 160 psi, and D is the displacement of stabilometer fluid necessary to increase horizontal pressure from 5 to 100 psi. So the typical values are values: varigraded, dense gradation, crushed stone base coats, the value is 80 plus, MH cells 15 to 30, and most Washington state subgrade soils less than 60. So basically this test was devised in the Washington, so that's why here the Washington state subgrade soils are mentioned over here. And you can see that the standard test methods in AASHTO, ASTM, and the Washington State Department of Transportation. WSDOT means Washington State Department of Transportation. Then comes the resilient modulus, M sub bar laboratory test. So triaxial resilient modulus test. The specimen is a cylindrical sample, normally 100 millimeter, 4 inches in diameter by 200 millimeter, 8 inch high, as shown in the figure. The sample is generally compacted in the laboratory. However, undisturbed samples are best if available. which is rare. The specimen is enclosed vertically by a thin rubber membrane and on both ends by rigid surfaces, platens, as sketched in figure 2.17. The sample is placed in a pressure chamber and a confining pressure is applied, sigma 3, as sketched in figure 2.18. You can see the three figures 2.16, 2.17 and the figure 2.18 to develop a real feel about the triaxial resilient modulus test. The sample then undergoes, this point is very important, the sample then undergoes repeated pulses of an axial stress. So it means in the triaxial resilient modulus test, we are going to introduce the repeated pulses of axial stress. This deviator stress is designated sigma d and is equal the total vertical stress applied by the testing operators sigma 1 minus the confining stress sigma 3. In other words, the deviator stress is the repeated stress applied to the sample. These stresses are further illustrated in figure 2.19 on the next slide. The resulting strains are calculated over a gauge length which is designated by L. And you can see, you could be able to see it on the figure 2.20 on the next slide. So modulus of resilience, that is sigma d over epsilon, that is m sub r is the resilient modulus, where sigma d is the deviator stress p over a, but keep this thing in the mind that p over here is the repeated load. It's not a static load, it's repeated load. A is the cross-sectional area of the sample, and epsilon, that is the recoverable axial strain, that is delta L over L. L is the gauge length over which the sample deformation is measured, and delta is the change in sample length due to applied load. So this is the figure 2.19 showing the stresses acting on the triaxial specimen, and here you can see that this is the gauge length L, the gauge length over which the sample deformation is measured, and this is the actual arrangement that we're having for this test. So elastic modulus, CBR and R value correlations. So a widely used empirical relationship is this one, and here you can see 1500 times CBR, that is E sub SG, where E sub SG, that is a subgrade resilient modulus in PSI, and CBR, that is the California bearing ratio. This equation is restricted to fine-grained materials with soft CBR values of 10 or less. Like all such correlations, it should be used only if appropriate for project-specific conditions. So there is another relationship, that is modulus of resilience is equal to 2,555 into CBR with power 0.64. The 1993 AASHTO guide offers the following correlation equation between R value and elastic modulus for fine-grained soils with R values less than or equal to 20. So this is the relationship. Okay, now look at the construction works, or in other words, you can say that we are going to consider the subgrade works. Surface preparing for construction. Before a pavement is actually placed at the construction site, the surface to be paved must be prepared. Adequate surface preparation is essential to long-term pavement performance. Pavements constructed without adequate surface preparation may not meet smoothness specifications, may not bond to the existing pavement in the case of overlays, or may fail because of inadequate subgrade support. Surface preparation generally takes one of two forms: preparing the subgrade and granular base coats for new pavement. This can involve such activities as subgrade stabilization, for example with lime, cement or emulsified asphalt, over-excavation of poor subgrade, applying a prime coat or compacting the subgrade. Preparing an existing pavement surface for overlay. This involves such activities as removing a top layer through milling, applying a leveling course, applying a tack coat, rubberizing or cracking and seating an underlying rigid pavement, and replacing localized areas of extreme damage. Specific actions for each method depend upon the pavement type and purpose, environmental conditions, subgrade conditions, local experience, and specifications. So, subgrade preparation for new pavement. The overall strength and performance of a pavement is dependent not only upon its design, including both mixed design and structural design, but also on the load-bearing capacity of the subgrade soil. Thus, anything that can be done to increase the load-bearing capacity or structural support of the subgrade soil will most likely improve the pavement load-bearing capacity and thus pavement strength and performance. Additionally, greater subgrade structural capacity can result in thinner but not excessively thin and more economical pavement structure. So this point must be taken with care that additionally greater subgrade structural capacity can result in thinner but not excessively thin and more economical pavement structure. Finally, the finished subgrade should meet elevations, grades and slopes specified in the contract plans. So subgrade compaction, and after compaction the in situ unit weight will have to be determined. In order to provide maximum structural support as measured by modulus of resilience, CBR or R value, a subgrade soil must be compacted to an adequate density. And this density can be checked through the field density test. If it is not, the subgrade will continue to compress, deform or erode after construction, causing pavement cracks and deformations. Generally, adequate density is specified as the relative compaction for the top 150 mm or 6 inches of subgrade of not less than 95% of maximum density determined in the laboratory. In fill areas, subgrade below the top 150 mm 6 inches is often considered adequate if it is compacted to 90% relative density. In order to achieve these densities, the subgrade must be at or near its optimum moisture content, the moisture content at which the maximum density can be achieved. Usually, compaction of in situ or fill subgrade will result in adequate structural support. So here you can see the different stages. Material is being dumped, it is being placed properly, and that is being compacted. So here you can see the vibratory smooth wheel rollers. In fact, the vibratory rollers are best suited for the granular type materials. Pneumatic rubber tire rollers can be used for a variety of soils. And here you can see vibratory sheep foot roller. And if you just look at the drum of the roller, you are having the projections. And these projections resemble to feet of sheep. That's why it is called as sheep foot roller. And such type of rollers are best suited for the clay soils. Now look at this one. We are having the dry unit weight axis, and this is for the depth, and vibratory compaction of a sand. Variation of dry unit weight with depth and number of roller passes, and the thickness of one layer was kept equal to 1.82 in this example. Now look at that. What is happening with the increase of the roller passes? Here the 2 passes, here 5 passes, 15, and here the 45 number of roller passes that are 45. So you can see with the increase of the number of roller passes, you are having an improvement in the dry unit weight, and you can see over here. So basically, when the compaction is being done, just at the, if you are just having the impact of that compaction up to this depth, let's look at this one. So you can see that the maximum effect is somewhere here that you are having under the influence of the vibratory compaction. Increasing subgrade support alternative means if the structural support offered by the in situ compacted subgrade is or is estimated to be inadequate, there are 3 options. Any one or combination of the 3 can be used. Stabilization. The binding characteristics of the materials generally increase subgrade load-bearing capacity. Typically, lime is used with highly plastic soils, plasticity index greater than 10. Cement is used with less plastic soils, plasticity index less than 10. And emulsified asphalt can be used with sandy soils. For flexible pavements, a prime coat is not effective on silty clay or clay soils because the material cannot be absorbed into such a fine soil. Number 2, over excavation. The general principle is to replace poor load bearing in situ subgrade with better load bearing fill. Typically 0.3 to 0.6 meter, that is 1 to 2 feet of poor soil may be excavated and replaced with better load-bearing fill such as gravel or sand borrow. Number 3, add a base course, perhaps a sub-base course over the subgrade. A base course offers additional load-bearing capacity. New pavement structural designs often use some sort of granular base course unless subgrade structural support is extremely good and expected loads are extremely low. Base courses are subjected to the same compaction and elevation requirements as subgrade soils. Now on this particular slide you can see the equipment for pressure injection of lime slurry. So lime slurry can be injected into the subgrade to enhance the properties of the subgrade. So another view of the pressure injection of lime slurry, you can see that with the help of this arrangement, the slurry is being injected. Subgrade field test. One of the common tests that's used in the field in order to evaluate the strength of soil layer, that is the CBR value, is the DCP, dynamic cone penetrometer. So here you can see This is the dynamic cone penetrometer and it is being used over here. Look at this. So look at the relationship. Log of California being ratio value is equal to 2.628 minus 1.273 log of DCP. So whatever the DCP value you are getting in millimeter per blow, you will put it over here to estimate the CBR value in the field. Subgrade elevation. This is very important. After final grading, often called fine grading, the subgrade elevation should generally conform closely to the construction plan of subgrade elevation. Large elevation discrepancies should not be compensated for by varying pavement or base thickness because number 1, HMA hot mix asphalt, PCC and aggregate are more expensive than subgrade. So this point must be kept in the mind that HMA, PCC and aggregates are more expensive than subgrade. Number 2, in the case of flexible pavements, HMA compacts differentially. Thicker areas of HMA compact more than thinner areas of HMA. So this point must be kept in mind. I will repeat that thicker areas of HMA compact more than thinner areas of HMA, which will result in the subgrade elevation of discrepancies affecting final pavement smoothness. So in this way we have discussed the soil works in detail. Thank you.